Hi guys. We took a quick look at paragraph text here in Adobe Illustrator, and we are going to try something else. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to grab our text tool again. Instead of clicking and pulling a box, I'm simply going to click once, and I'm going to type, and I'm going to type out point text because that is what we are creating. And let's take a quick look at our character palette here. Let's increase the size of that so it's a little bit larger so we can see what we're doing. There we go. Increase it to 50 points. And I don't really like this font, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to something that I like a little bit better. I don't know. How about Adobe Garamond? And let's make this even larger. Now, what is point text? Point text is the text you're probably going to use more than paragraph text here in Adobe Illustrator, simply because Adobe Illustrator isn't the software that intends to create things like magazines and books and newspapers and stuff like that. We have what we call pagination software to do that, things like Adobe InDesign, or maybe even this thing called Quark Express. Those are the softwares that intend to do all layouts and paragraphs and stuff like that. While Illustrator can do it, it's really not meant for that. I mean, it totally can, but really, Illustrator is meant for point text. And point text is the kind of text that we see on posters and on book covers, and the text we see in logos, and the text we see in small little bursts that attract our eye. That's what point text is. And point text is a little bit different than paragraph text in the fact that I click once and I just start typing. And I can type forever. I can literally type forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, dot, 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 as long as I want. I can also hit delete, and I can get rid of all that and get right back to here. So if I want to go ahead and hit return, I can type forever and ever and hit return and ever, hit return and ever, dot, dot, dot. I can do that here too. So I can go ahead and I can hit return if I want and give myself sentences. Therefore, if I do that, I can play around with the space here in between my lines of text. We learned last video that is called leading. Okay, we talked about the 5 up, 5 down rule, so I can do that if I wish. Okay, I also can go ahead and I can play around with the space in between letters, which is known as tracking. Right here, that's a global change, or specific spaces called kerning. So let's go ahead and just track and kern a little bit. So let's go ahead and say this is 75 points. So I'm going to just type in 80. Go my 5 up, 5 down rule. 5 up of 75, that looks pretty good. Let's get a little closer. Let's get 5 down. Ooh, you see, and that's an example of why it's not so good. See how this F and this P run into each other? We do not want to see that. So we have to increase our leading for sure. Again, the 5 up, 5 down rule, that is a place to start. That's all. In fact, I think I need to increase it a little bit more, but not the 20% that we had before. Okay? And I think that this could work out okay. Tracking, we can go ahead and we can use this drop down menu, and we can, if we use the positive numbers, it puts more space in between all the letters. If I put the negative number in place, it takes space away from all the letters. Obviously, neither of those look pretty good. I usually track a little bit in the negatives, so like 5 or 10, but it actually does depend on the font that I'm using. So negative 10 there looks pretty good. And then I can just kind of look around for things that look kind of odd. They stand out, like this N and this D feel like they have a little bit more space in between them than other letters. Same here as this O and this R. So I'll take my type tool and I'll click right here in between them. And this is when I'm going to kern. And again, positive numbers push the text apart from one another. Negative numbers bring it closer together. So, whoa, that's too close. Try this. And I'll tell you what, it just takes time. And after a while, you just notice it really, quite a bit. and you'll go ahead and you'll track and you'll kern and you'll do your leading, and it'll just be like putting on your shoes. You don't even think about doing it anymore. You just do, because visually you notice that there's bad habits forming in front of you. Now, I'd like to point out something that was a little different between point text and paragraph text. Okay. So when I click on the selection tool, I get a bounding box around here. And point text acts like every other object that we have. In fact, that I can go ahead and I can come to this corner here, and I can hold my shift key down, and I can scale. And check it out. It gets smaller. Now, when we did that in the paragraph, the box got smaller, but the text stayed the same size. So point text is like an object, okay? And that means that if I can scale it, yep, I can rotate it. And I can do everything else too. Like if I wanted to, I could go to Object, Transform, and Reflect. And I could reflect this on top of one itself, and I could copy it. That's kind of trippy looking. So I'm going to undo that because it's kind of weird. And I can select this, and it's got a fill. And I can go ahead and I can put a fill on here. Cool. And I can go ahead and if I feel like it, I can put a stroke on here. And this is going to lead me into my next thing. Stroking text. Okay. For one reason or another, people think that to make text stand out, we need to, put a stroke on it. It's the same kind of people that also decide to bold, italicize, and underline text. The same folks want to go ahead and put strokes on it. And I get it. It makes it stand out a little bit. But it also does some really bad things to it. So let's zoom in and see what I'm talking about. So first, let's take the stroke off, okay? And let's just go ahead and look at this word here, ever. So this is a serif text, okay? It means it's the one that has the tails, essentially. And so that means that there's going to be some thin parts of the letter, like right here in the R. And then there's going to be some thick parts of the letter, like right here in the R, right? We see it in the E, some really thick parts here, and then some thinner parts like right here. We see it in the V, a really thick part in this downstroke, and a much thinner part in this upstroke. So it's there, and it's in every single letter in a serif font. It's also in letters like this, in sans serif fonts, or in decorative fonts, or in script fonts. There is variation in the width, okay, of the letter forms. It's just pretty normal. So keep an eye on this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a stroke on here. Oh, okay. So it looks like it's darker. Well, let's zoom out. Does that stand out quite a bit? Maybe a little bit, but, let's go ahead and add a second, stroke to it. How about now? That looks a little bit different. In fact, kind of weird. Let's zoom in again. Oh, take a look at that. What happened there? Well, let me try to explain. And to do that, I'm just going to cut this and come back to it. I'm going to make a square, a red square. In fact, I'm going to make 3 of them. And we're going to take a look at this concept of stroke. Now, I'm going to select all 3 of these things, and I'm going to apply a black stroke to all of them. And I'll increase it a little bit so we can see it from a distance, a 5-point stroke to every single one of these things here. I'll just move my palette here out of the way. And, okay, they all look the same, because they are. So, this first one here, okay, this is going to utilize this concept of stroke, this default concept of stroke, where a line stroke to the center, which means essentially this, that the blue line that we see here, that was my document balance before I put the stroke on it, see? After I applied the stroke, and I increased it in visual weight, right? You notice how the stroke falls both inside, like this, and outside, like this, of that line that I created. Hence, this concept of a line stroke to the center. So it falls on both the inside and the outside. Okay, let's come over to this one. This second one here says a line stroke to inside. So when I click on this, Check it out. That box that we created before, right? That's still the document bounds. The object bounds, the perimeter. And if I increase the stroke, well, check it out. It fills the inside of the shape. Okay? So now what? Let's come over to this last one here, and let's go ahead and click on the third stroke, which is called Align Stroke to Outside, and watch. It pushes it on the outside of it, so it's really like a frame, and I can make that much larger. So when we look at these things that really looked similar a few minutes ago, now they start to look a little bit different. Now, here's the thing about text. While it seems like it's available for me to align stroke on the inside or align stroke on the outside, I can't actually press those buttons in. They do not work. So therefore, as we increase the stroke, what happens is it aligns both on the outside and on the inside because it's defaulted to aligning stroke on the center of our letter form, which means that, man, trying to do these strokes don't really work. And in fact, I've been teaching design for over a decade now, and it's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is when people align a stroke incorrectly, because there's lazy way to do it, and that's the way that I was just doing a second ago, and then there is simply the correct way to do it. So let's go ahead and learn that. So let's go ahead and say correct way to stroke text, period. Okay, let's go ahead and start with that, and let's zoom in so we can see it pretty well. Nope, a little too much. That will work very well. So the correct way, and we should call it the correct way to stroke text. Yeah, there, that's much better. So anyway, the correct way to stroke text is not in the stroke palette, and it's not in the swatches. It's not in any of those things. In fact, the correct way to stroke text is really going to be found in this other palette that we haven't played around with yet, called Appearance. So Appearance, to just give you a little background, and let's go ahead and cut this and throw a little square out again like we had before. Appearance is the palette that we're going to use for a lot of things in Illustrator. And if you go on and you take Graphics 2 or you take Digital Prepress or any other class like that, you're going to find that Appearance becomes your friend when you're working in this software. Because while it gives us a little information right here about what's going on. So I selected this box and it tells me that I have a fill of black and a stroke of nothing, that my opacities are default, right? I can come right here and I can apply a red stroke, and I can increase the size of said stroke right here. I could also go ahead and select the opacity of my stroke, and I could bring it down, or I could set the opacity of my fill and I can bring it down. I can do that all here within here. Okay, I also have the opportunity to add new strokes or to add new fills, so I can do that here too. I also even have the ability to apply effects, which I'm not going to get into today, but they do exist. I'll get into them a little bit more. I shouldn't say today, but in this video. I won't get into in this video, but in a future video I will, because they do exist. So appearance we'll come back to a lot, but let's get back to that text, the correct way to stroke text, right? So we're going to use our appearance palette. So I'm going to select this, and automatically this comes up and it just says that it's type and that there are characters and that it has a default opacity. Good. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and we need to apply a stroke to this. But if we do that, watch what happens. Click, 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 click. Okay, there. We have a bunch of strokes. Now, all of a sudden, it says fill, right? I'm going to go undo this. It says fill, and there's no fill there. But wait a minute. You see fill, right? It's black. Well, by default, it doesn't recognize text as having a fill. So we have to put a fill in place. So let's go ahead and make this red. And then we have this stroke here, and let's make this black. And let's increase it to 2 or 3 points. Whoa. Okay, that looks just like the last one. Okay, and I thought that this video was supposed to show me the correct way to stroke text, and that looks just as bad as it did before. So, the appearance palette is kind of like a layer palette. And the fact that I can turn eyeballs on and off, okay, for visibility. And just like a layer palette, I can move these concepts around. So, and that's, I guess, what I'm calling them is these concepts, these attributes, if you will, to our object here. So right now, stroke is sitting on top of fill, and it's doing what it's supposed to do in the fact that it's going on the center, so it's falling on the inside and the outside. Can I come over here and can I align the stroke differently? Look, it's even faded out now. See, before it wasn't even faded out, but now they're just like, no, you cannot. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to click on stroke, and I'm just going to drag down and check it out. I'm going to drop it below fill, and I'm going to let go and watch what happens. Wow, look at that. That's way easier to read already. Let's go ahead and increase it. Okay. Well, that's starting to look kind of different. Kind of looks sort of like it works. And I think I'm going to increase my tracking just a little bit because I have some text that's literally on top of one another. And check out this T and this H. I'm going to click right here in between the two of them. And I'm going to go ahead and increase my kerning too. And that didn't seem to do much, so let's go ahead and really increase it. And increase it some more. And wow, that does not want to get apart from one another. Every now and then Illustrator does this. Okay, so I tap the space bar. It will come apart from one another, so that's good. So maybe like 2,000. Yeah. So, why is it doing that? Well, it has something to do with the actual stroke. So if I select this and I turn the stroke off, okay, and I go ahead and I try to click in here again, I should be able to really get this separated a lot easier. Doesn't want to do it. Let's try this. That works. So, here's a great question. Why is this doing this? There is an answer for you, okay? And it's an odd answer, all right? It has nothing to do with our stroke. It has nothing to do with the letters, okay? This thing right now is known as what's called a ligature. A ligature is a special combination of a couple letters of text. We see it with not all fonts, but some. And right now we're seeing it with Garamond right now. And it's because Garamond is what we call a piece of open type. All right, it's just one of those formats that we took a look at in our text typography lecture there. So if I go to open type, I can turn those on or off, okay? And again, open type is part of the type palette. So again, that's underneath window and character, window and type. And there's character, there's open type, there's paragraphs. Not every font is an open type. And in fact, I didn't even intend to show this to you now. This was a complete coincidence, but since it was there, I had to show it, okay? There's other things here that are open types as well. I'll highlight this, and I'm going to type in FI. Ooh, there's one. And IT, no, that one didn't work out there. TH, that's one. And there are a couple other ones that are kind of escaping me at the moment. But the thing is that you can turn those on or you can turn those off. All the kerning in the world is not going to fix that. So you just need to be aware of that. And it's nothing you did, and it's not like you're going to quit and it's going to come back and it's going to work. It's just this thing called a ligature, okay? And you can turn them on again or you can turn them off. It's up to you. We have all sorts of different ligatures in our text here. So like this is called a discretionary one, a discretionary ligature. And look what it did. It just made this funky connection between the C and the T right here. So you're going to see those things here and there within different pieces of text. It's completely normal. Some people really like ligatures, other people don't. They were set up because it helps the eye travel from one letter to another. That's why they exist. Again, some people are really into them, some people aren't. It's up to you to decide. There's not a right or a wrong there. But anyway, let's look at the correct way to stroke text. Look at that. That looks pretty good. And can I make that stroke bigger? The answer is yes. Yes, I can. And just be aware, the more I increase the size of the stroke, most likely the more tracking and kerning I'm going to have to do, because essentially it like starts to just make these letters kind of like get jammed together. So you got to be careful how far you take it. But I want to take it pretty far right now because I want to show you this other cool thing while we're here. And then we're going to end the video for right now. So I have the ability to add multiple strokes, as you saw when I was just kind of clicking on it before. So let's add a second one and check it out. Since I had that stroke highlighted, it just makes a duplicate of it. So let's change this one to a white stroke. Oh, look at that. That looks pretty yucky. Okay, that's kind of disgusting looking. It's just white. It's just I just have the white sitting on top of black at the moment. Well, they're both the same exact size. They're both 10 points. What if I make this smaller? Hey, look what's going on. Check this out. And what I have here for you guys is I have inline stroke text or double stroke text, whatever you want to call it. And this really does stand out. This stands out nice. And you'll see a ton of different text treatments done this way. You'll see a lot of titles, a lot of logos. You'll see branding for sports teams done this way, branding for stores, that sort of stuff. Usually around the holiday season, we see the big old letters that say sale, and they look like this, so they really pop. And it's just a way for us to go ahead and modify these things. Now, the beauty also of what we're doing here is this, working with the appearance palette is this. It's completely editable. What I mean by that is this. I'm going to go click, click, click. I'm going to highlight the correct way, and if I click one more time, oh, no, I only get the sentence, so I got to go ahead and click and pull across to get the entire, 2 sentences here. And I'm going to type. And it's editable. And check it out. It goes ahead and it keeps my settings here for my fill and my stroke, which is pretty cool. And it stays editable forever. Okay? It doesn't ever become uneditable unless you do something to make it uneditable. So this is, again, the correct way to stroke. All right, the correct way to stroke, utilizing the appearance versus what I call this, the lazy way to stroke text. Would not include these whatsoever. So let's take these strokes away. Okay. Oh, we'll even take this fill away, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just click on my stroke palette here, and I'm going to pick a color, and I'm just going to go click, 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 and make it bigger. And wow, look at that. That's pretty telling. Okay, versus the correct way to stroke text versus the lazy way to stroke text. Hopefully, you don't fall in this pitfall of what many people do, and instead you utilize the appearance palette. Thank you.